Welcome to Going Beyond, and I'm so happy that you could join us today. Today I have a guest who lives in a very far off part of the country. In fact, she's from Australia and she's here on a very short visit to India. I was able to drag her into the studio because I think Sarah Lamb has much to tell us. She is a professional social worker, and that is something very, very special indeed. And so I've asked her to come in here to explain to me what it's all about, what her work is all about, how she likes her work, what she does. And so it's my pleasure to welcome Sarah Lamb. Sarah, thank you for coming in today.
Thank
I know
you.
you're on holiday, and so you're having fun, and I've dragged you in here. But why did you want to be a social worker?
That's a really good question, Jen. I've always wanted to be a social worker right from high school. I always had an interest in social justice and always wanted to help other people. So that was really the beginnings of why I wanted to study social work.
Right.
Yeah.
So you had to study it for actually over 4 years, right?
I did.
It's fairly intense, isn't it?
It's an intense course. It's a bachelor's course. And in Australia, you can do a master's of social work as well. So yes, a 4-year bachelor's degree to become a social worker in Australia.
Right. What does the work actually involve? When you say social worker, what does it actually mean, Sarah?
Okay. When we're talking about social work, it is really looking at the person and their entire environment. So it's not just focusing on the person. It's looking about where they live, their family system, income, housing. It's a whole picture of the person, not just focusing on the person and their issue singularly. It's a whole view.
Right. So how does that person come in touch with you? Have they contacted your organization, or how does it work?
Yeah, so I work for a large organisation in Perth. The organisation is called Silver Chain, and it's
Silver Chain.
Correct, yes, and it's a healthcare organisation that's been around for close to 200 years. So it's got a very long history. The program that I work in is a palliative care program, which basically means that when people are approaching the end of their life, they are able to receive community palliative care, which means that they are cared for in their own home, so that they don't have to go to hospital. So people will come to our service and then get referred to see a social worker.
Right. So when you say social worker, what is it that you do? Do you actually visit their homes all the time? How does that work?
Yes, so we visit in the person's home. Sometimes it might be at their bedside. Sometimes it's just sitting in their lounge room or at their dining room table, so wherever they're most comfortable, because these people are sick. So we really try to make sure that they're as comfortable as possible. And then the first thing we will try and do is do an assessment of their situation. So we call it a psychosocial assessment, which really tries to look at all aspects of their life. So we look at family history, finances, legal things, practical things that they might need help with, and also how they're managing emotionally.
So it doesn't mean that you deal with just the one person. Is the whole family there, or do you have to actually only touch base with the patient?
Yeah, it really depends on what the situation is that is presented to us. So sometimes we might just speak to the patient. Sometimes we actually only speak to their carer because the patient's too unwell. They might be sleeping, or they might be in too much pain to talk to us. And so then sometimes we will just speak to the person that is looking after them. Or sometimes we'll have the entire family sitting with us and talking. We are very flexible. It just depends on what their needs are.
Right. So do you have to deal with the medical part of the person's situation or illness or disease?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We always acknowledge it, and we're always very aware. So we make sure that we will read up about the person before we go and visit them. So we've got some idea about what their diagnosis is and what their prognosis is as well. That's very important for us to know. But really, that's really it in terms of knowing about medically what's happening. We probably will talk sometimes about how their illness impacts them, because that's what we're interested in, is the impact of how this illness is impacting them day to day. whether that might mean that they are very tired, or it might mean that they're unable to walk anymore, or it could mean that they need help to have a shower and to get dressed, or it might mean that they're physically okay but emotionally they're very distressed.
Is that difficult to deal with, Sarah, when someone is emotionally upset? I mean, they are elderly, they might be quite ill, seriously ill, in fact, terminally ill, if that's the right word.
Yeah.
Is that difficult to deal with?
It can be at times. It can be difficult, but I think social workers learn to sit in difficult spaces. So we know that our job is not an easy one, and we don't expect it to be. And really, we're just there to walk alongside the patient. And so we know that we're comfortable sitting in uncomfortable spaces.
It must be, I think it would be very difficult to handle that. Do they want you there?
Most of the time.
Yes.
Most of the time. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes for some people, they might find our service intrusive because they're very, very private and they've lived a reclusive life, and they object to having a service become involved in their care. So, we will respect that. We will literally then, instead of doing a whole assessment with them, which takes time, we will literally just go and see them and say, what can we do for you? What do you need? And it might mean that they just need some help with paying a bill, or it might mean that they need some help with having regular meals. And then we'll address that need, and that is all we'll do.
Right. So what happens then to the family structure that the person lives with? Do you have to deal with this family structure as well?
Yes, we do. So our services, it really involves the family as well, but based on their needs. So we always have the client is always, or the patient is always our main focus, and followed very closely is the carer, because they are integral to the patient's care. So we need
the well-being of that patient. Of
course.
Yes.
And really, if the carer is not having their needs met, or if they're struggling, then that impacts on the patient. So the carer and the patient absolutely are main client. But if there's a family member like a son or a daughter, or sometimes the client is actually a child that is dying, so then of course their family needs to be cared for as well, because it's obviously a very difficult time for them.
I'm getting the feeling that most of the patients and the people whom you deal with are in fact terminally ill. Is that the thing?
That's correct. So everyone that enters into a palliative care service has to have a terminal illness. So they must be diagnosed with an illness where they know that their life is going to be very limited. Now, that no one knows when someone's going to die, of course.
Aren't we all, yes.
So sometimes, it might be literally 1 day, 1 hour that they're with us, or it could be maybe a year that they're with us. But everyone that is part of our program has a terminal illness, and they know that they're going to die.
Okay. What about the medical part of this? The doctor, a nurse, or anybody else involved with that same patient?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So we have a full, what we call interdisciplinary team. So we're a team that is made up, we're a nurse-led service, so predominantly run by nursing staff. So we have a coordinator of the team that's always a nurse. Then we have then a few nurses that will, about 5 nurses on one team that will look after a cohort of patients. And then we'll have maybe about 3 doctors, 1 social worker, a spiritual care worker. And we also have people that attend to the patient's hygiene. So we call them care aides. And we have volunteers as well.
Right. What about if that patient needs to be hospitalized? How does that happen, and who is responsible for that?
People often will go back into hospital because they will, need a symptom attended to, or they might need some more treatment, or it could be for lots of different reasons. So depending upon what the situation is, our nurses usually will organise that for the patient. They will liaise with the hospital and the doctors at the hospital for an admission.
I'm sure it's the same in Australia. There must be so many people who would need assistance of a social worker like yourself. How do they get in touch with you? Do you find them? How does the system work?
So overall, do you mean in general?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's a great question. It depends on what the person's needs are. So there'll be social workers based in schools, there'll be social workers based in major hospitals, there'll be social workers that are based in the child welfare system where they look into abuse in different sorts. There'll be social workers that may just do counselling. So depending on what a person's need is, they would probably find a social worker sort of where their need is based. So if it's for a child and it's to do with school, then they'd go to their school. If they're a patient in a hospital, it would be in the hospital. Yeah, so that's how it works.
Right. So that means, Sarah, in that environment, there are different types of social workers.
Correct.
So are there specialist social workers?
Absolutely there is. So a social worker will study social work at university, and then they will find their job, or where they want to work, and then they will specialise in that field of social work. So prior to working in palliative care, I worked in the area of foster care. In Australia, we call this out-of-home care, where children have been removed from their families and then placed with a foster carer. So that's another type of social work. My daughter is a school social worker.
Yes, she's followed your footsteps.
She has. So that is correct. Social work then becomes specialised to different areas, but our skills are always transferable. So the basic skills that we learn in social work can be applied to different areas, and then on the job you fine-tune to be able to meet your client's needs the best that you can.
So tell me, as a social worker, what would you say are the best qualities a social worker should have?
Yeah.
Obviously, you've got it. You've been there for 30 years, right?
That's a great question. There's lots of good qualities for a social worker. I think they've always got to have an attitude of learning, because you never stop learning on the job. You don't ever know everything. We're always learning. I think it's important to know that we cannot fix any and everything. That's not what our job is. Our job is just to walk alongside someone, and if we're able to help someone, then absolutely that is a great outcome. But we need to not be focused on fixing things, because then it would become very frustrating. And I suppose you need to have good boundaries as a social worker, because you're working with people all the time that are struggling and that are going through difficult situations. You have to remain, you have to have clear boundaries so that you don't become too involved.
But can't you become involved? Don't you think that would be a natural feeling, Sarah?
It absolutely is a natural feeling.
Yes.
And we treat our clients with care and compassion, and we empathise with them, but we always need to remain very clear about what our boundaries are, because otherwise our career in social work would be very short.
Right, exactly. How are you able to separate your own personal life with your family, plus this very demanding, I would say, a very demanding profession you have chosen to be in? How are you doing that division?
Yeah. So with social work, you learn to what we call reflective practice. So as soon as we have been involved with a client, or we've done something with them, especially if it has been challenging, we will always reflect on what we've done and how it's impacted on us, and how it's impacted on the person that we've worked with. We will usually find another colleague to talk to about the experience. So that's one way that we remain with good boundaries. And then we also have to have professional supervision, which means that we need to sit down with another social worker and talk about our caseload and what's been happening, and how that's impacted on us, and what we could do better, what we've done well, and we reflect on all of our work. And then really the last thing that we probably need to do is have good self-care, which might mean that we exercise, or we eat the right foods, or we meditate, or it depends on what works for the individual and what helps them to let their day go after finishing it.
So would you say then that your self-care of yourself is extremely important in this profession?
It's extremely important, yeah, absolutely, because you want to be able to continue working and helping people, and for that you have to take care of yourself.
You're probably one of the leading social workers in your city, Sarah. I'm just asking, what about the money aspect of this whole thing? Does the patient contact your office, and then is there some transaction? How is it expensive, first of all?
So with my organisation, and pretty much for all social workers, patients don't pay directly at all for services. So the service that I work in particular is completely free of charge.
Really?
It's completely free, and which is fabulous, because people of all ages and status in life all die. So we have very people that are very poor, and we have people that are very wealthy, and just like all of us, people die. It doesn't discriminate whatsoever. So our service is there for whoever needs it, which is fabulous. So no one has to pay anything.
Really, that's amazing. So is it a government run program or what?
Yes, so 𝗁𝒂𝒏 is a private organisation that receives government funding from our state government. So our health department funds us every few years, and they give us a block sum of money. Direct or the people that run our program decide how that money is spent.
Okay. Now, I've been reading, of course, I understand that in Kerala there is an attempt to do the same sort of thing, because we don't have this for sure, this kind of social work that you're talking about. Have you heard anything about that Kerala system?
Yeah, this is something that we discovered quite recently. So at the moment, I've got a social work student that is learning how to be a social worker, and she recently had to do a presentation about social work, or about palliative care and social work all over the world. And one of the places, interestingly, that she looked at was Kerala, and it sounds like it's a community palliative care program, the same as ours, where it is delivered in people's homes. So it sounds like it's a voluntary, run by volunteers, and by all accounts, it sounds like it's run very well, and that it's meeting a lot of need for people.
What is striking me now as we speak, Sarah, is that India is such a large country. I mean, we've just got so many people, and there must be so many people who really look for assistance like the kind you're talking about. How would it be possible to have an association like yours in a big country like ours? How do you think they would be able to cope? Wouldn't it be really difficult, Sarah?
I guess it would be, Jennifer, but I assume the government would have to pitch in. Absolutely they would, because how else would people be able to afford this? You can't expect people to be paying for a service like this, because this is the most difficult time of their life, and often people just don't have the money to be able to pay for it. And really, a service like this needs to be able to be accessed by everyone in the community if they need it. Right. In fact, if a service like this was funded by the government, it actually comes with savings for them, because it means that it keeps people out of the hospital system. It means that people can remain at home with the help of a interdisciplinary team like ours, and can be cared for in their home, with their family around, with their friends, and with probably local services also probably pitching in to help, I guess. To make it sustainable. So I think, certainly government funding is very important, but also help from the community. So quite often what we might see happen is we've learned how to tap into people's own resources. So for instance, if someone is a member of a church community, we know that church communities will often offer a lot of assistance to people, because they're often, they're carrying charitable organisations. And so if someone needs food, or if someone needs someone to come and sit by them and just offer them emotional support, that can come from a church community, and that's just one way of how the community can also become involved and assist with caring for the dying person at home.
Right. I just hope that as we're talking, Sarah, there could be somebody out there, maybe an organization, maybe a government, maybe a group of people, could be maybe getting a few little breaks from what you're trying to tell us today, because it seems like an amazing thing that you are offering people who really need it at a very difficult time of their lives.
Yeah.
So do you help people with like their paperwork, for instance, because that's usually an issue, isn't it?
Yeah, that's correct. So often for people, they will find their paperwork so overwhelming.
Yes.
Because they are, again, they're tired, they're exhausted, sometimes they're in pain, but they need to sort their affairs out. So for someone, it might mean that they need to make a will, or they might need to look at power of attorney or power of guardianship, which are things that that people get sorted out in Australia. Or it might mean that they need to sort out things with their bank, or whatever it is.
Their family even.
Correct, yes. Correct. So absolutely, that's a big part of what we do, is assist people with. And look, we can't do. So when we're talking about legal things like writing a will, we can't be involved in helping someone write it. But what we can do is give advice about how to do it, and link people up with services that will then assist them. So a big role of a social worker is actually to link people to services that are already in existence.
To show them the way.
Show them the way.
Show them the way.
Correct.
Do they find that sometimes a social worker is crossing a boundary? Has that ever happened?
I'm sure it happens all the time.
Really?
Yeah, I'm sure it does, because, we're all human, and we feel for people that, that are in front of us that are struggling. And so that might happen, but that's why we have professional supervision, so that social workers can be checked, they can have their work checked upon, I suppose, and I guess, be assisted to learn that that's not the right thing to do.
Right. Do you have legal support for them as well?
Well, we do. So within our particular department, we have got a legal service at Silver Chain that would be able to assist. But also in Australia, we have an association of social workers, and part of that registration comes with indemnity insurance. So that's something that, people can fall back on. And for some people, they might be a member of a union, which is also another body that can provide some assistance to a worker if they require it.
Right. At this point, I want to talk to you about this rather tricky thing about suicide-assisted, passing away. And how would you deal with that?
That's a great question as well too, because this is something that has become very current in our workplace for the past 2 years. So we call it voluntary assisted dying. It's more commonly known as euthanasia, because death by suicide is illegal in Australia for sure. So it's something that we need to be very, very careful about, and it's something that we try and make sure that people, have their symptoms managed the best that they can, so they don't feel like they need to take their own life, which we want to avoid at all costs. But for some people, they want to have the decision about when it is that they're going to die, because they want to die with dignity. That is very important for some people to, I'd say it's important for all people to die with dignity, but for some people, dignity looks different to what might look to another person. So we have in Perth what we call the Care Navigating Team.
Care Navigating Team.
And it's completely separate to us. So it's a very separate government-run organisation that will help assist someone to go on the pathway if they choose to do voluntary assisted dying. It's quite a process that needs to be undertaken before someone can be approved to die when they choose.
Have you ever had that happen with you in your 30 years?
Absolutely. So it's only been in the past 2 years that people have had this choice of being able to choose voluntary assisted dying, and it's interesting because we found that a lot more people had taken up the option of doing this than what we thought. So, so for a palliative care team, it can be a bit challenging to see that happen, because sometimes you might wonder, you know, are we doing our job properly?
Is it the right thing you're advising or whatever?
Look, it's always the person's decision. It's always their choice to make, to go down this pathway. But we would like to, I guess our aim is to make sure that people die comfortably and with dignity, and so, yeah, sometimes it can be a little bit of a challenge when people choose to do this, but that's, you know, that's, I guess, a personal thing. People need to have the choice to die the way that they want.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me move away a little bit now and ask you that your daughter is involved with, your social care as for children. So how does that work? How different is it to what you're doing?
Yeah, look, it's different and it's similar actually. So she works in a Catholic primary school, and she works with primary school children, so from ages 4 up to 11. And so Abby is dealing with lots of grief and loss actually, and that's where our work crosses over. Because sadly, parents do die, and or parents might separate or divorce, and or they might move away from where they're living. So grief and loss it doesn't necessarily have to do with death and dying. It means a loss of anything really. So in Abby's work with these children, she does deal with a lot of grief and loss issues, which is very similar to what I would be dealing with in a palliative care service, because grief and loss is a part of death and dying.
Yes,
Correct.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So now, after so many years as a social worker, is there any other area of social work that you would aspire to enter?
Do you know what? I think I work in the best job, and I can honestly say that I would be very happy to remain working in this field of social work.
Really?
I think it's the ultimate. I really do, because it's a very gentle area of social work. You are dealing with people that want to have your assistance and your help, and if they don't want to, then that's okay. Whereas a lot of other social work might actually be what we call statutory social work, where it's been, it's almost forced upon people to have a social worker involved in their life.
And that might irritate some people a lot.
Of course it does, especially if they have their children removed from their care. Often that's where we see statutory social work, when parents are unable to look after their children properly and they need to be taken away from them. That would be such a tough area of social work to be working in. I know it is. So in fact, I love my job. It's a really lovely area of social work to be working in.
Well, Sarah Lamb, you're a happy person. You're always laughing from what I know of you. There you go. But you know, I can see that you truly enjoy what you're doing.
I do.
And I really wish you the best of luck. And Sarah, I'm so happy you could come in today to my studio. I wish you a really good trip for the rest of what time you have here in India.
Thank you very much.
And I do hope that there's somebody out there who has listened to us and who has heard you. And perhaps if there is some government agency somewhere along the way, I would love to get in touch with them, and I'll let them see the program.
Of course.
And
of course.
maybe, get back and say, what can we do? Can we follow the same pattern? Sarah, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Well, it was great to have Sarah Lamb here in my program today. And I think that what she has talked about is so solid, and at the same time, it's so necessary in this terrible world of ours sometimes. And so we wish her the best, and I wish you, my viewers, all the very best. And don't forget to keep watching Going Beyond every weekend. You take care. Bye for now.